21,532 employees were laid off by 72 Indian startups as on 31st of December 2022. Now let me tell you something. Layoffs are just a symptom. The root cause is reckless hiring. The root cause is careless hiring just to be able to show numbers of employees, to be able to weave a story to enhance valuations. Now, I am making this video for those founders, management teams, CEOs and entrepreneurs who genuinely care for their people, and even though their business runs into dead ends, what can they do to avoid laying people off and explore other alternatives to be able to reduce their costs and take their teams with them till the finish line of their business. In my humble opinion as a business coach, what I realize is this: at the end of the day, the decision to fire people comes only if there is heartlessness in the management. I have seen businesses survive through the crisis of the pandemic period, survive through the crisis of the 2008 recession, and still keep people together and not lay them off. So when I read news day in day out of employees being laid off from so-called reputed brands, it really pains my heart, and for me that's a true reflection of the character of the management teams running these organizations. I mean, think about it. We've all read enough and seen enough where at one hand companies are laying off their staff, but on the other hand the entrepreneurs and the management teams are drawing heavy bonuses or diluting their shares and cashing out extensively through the same phase. So it genuinely boils down to leadership intent, according to me. And that's why this video is being created specifically to reach out to those entrepreneurs and founders who have the intent to take their teams along and genuinely want to understand what are their alternatives so that they could avoid this ruthless act of laying people off and keeping their teams tight even through times of crisis. So let's get started with understanding what are those 8 alternatives that any business could explore apart from laying people off. The first alternative that I would recommend, which is a no-brainer, is putting a hiring freeze. I mean, the simplest thing you can do when you are hitting a situation in your business where you want to lay people off is to stop all kinds of new hiring and new onboarding of employees. I find it extremely ruthless when I see businesses who are offering pink slips and laying people off at one level and at the same time are rolling out fresh offer letters to another set of employees that they're bringing on board. It just doesn't make sense. It just tells you that the management did not even project what kind of people do they need, what roles do they need people for, and they're just playing this roulette game where if the numbers don't work for them, they just place their money on some other bets, which is not healthy. You're playing with people's careers here, you're playing with people's lives here. So the least you can do, even if you do it as a PR move, is to put a hiring freeze when you are laying people off. It can just help you save some money and retain people back who've trusted you with their careers. So alternative number 1, put a hiring freeze. The second obvious alternative to explore to kind of reduce your costs so that you can sustain your existing teams is to put a freeze on pay raises and bonuses. Again, it just doesn't make sense that you're firing people at one side and then you're giving pay raises and bonuses to a certain segment of employees in your organization. It does not make any sense mathematically, emotionally, karmically, spiritually, at all levels. It just doesn't make sense, and definitely doesn't make sense financially. So put a pay raise freeze or a bonus freeze during the times where your business is running into crisis, and let people know that, hey, we either have to choose between providing pay raises and bonuses to a certain segment of our employees and letting people go, or we all come together during this difficult time and we offer to not take any pay raises or bonuses and see this phase through without firing anybody in the organization. And trust me, these are the times when people offer support to the organization and genuinely come together to be able to support their peers, to not let them go and see the pink slip. Which brings me to the third alternative that one could explore if their business is hitting a dead end and they are forced to lay people off. The third alternative is to cut any kind of costs, any kind of expenditures which are in an exploration or an experimentation stage. What do I mean by that? If your business is in a crisis, this is not the time for you to just go out there and experiment on certain ideas that you believe may work for your business. Now, one may argue saying, Rajiv, if we don't bet on experiments, how will we grow out of the current situation? Well, here's the truth. If you want to grow out of the current situation, you don't have to do massive experiments. You can do small improvements and testing of strategies till you see a proof of concept for you to be convinced enough to pump in money into those strategies to scale them up to give you enough returns to pull your business out of a crisis situation. But what I have seen usually is in times of crisis, management teams lose their bearings in terms of decision making. They become overtly optimistic on anything that's a new idea, even if there is no foundational proof of concept whether that idea will work at scale or not, and they rather commit money resources to those ideas which don't even have any proof of concept as against retaining their existing staffs. I don't see sense in that. For me, people come first, business comes second. And I feel if you protect the people and take care of the people and make a decision to not lay people off and put your experiments at rest for some time and do marginal improvements and testing of proof of concept, that's a much more diligent method, and it shows a lot more intent as a management that you genuinely care for your teams. So, at the time where your business is in crisis, don't leak money on experiments that are running on assumptions. Rather be more diligent and make subtle improvements to increase profitability and improve cash flows, but with the commitment that you will not let go of your team members. If you're able to do that, you will send a strong message to your team and you'll see people genuinely coming together to do whatever it takes to grow the business. Which brings me to the fourth alternative any business could use to avoid layoffs. And the most obvious one is management pay cuts. Think about it. If your business is in a crisis, then you don't eliminate those whose livelihood, whose survival depends on the salary. You just take management pay cuts to avoid and eliminate some level of luxuries at the level of the management so that they can sustain and support their ground level employees. I think this is an obvious one, but it's the one that most people avoid because it's going to hit their own pockets. And this is where I say, intent of the management is most visible in times of crisis. Do they choose to put their neck on the line, or do they choose to recklessly slaughter those who are voiceless and faceless people in their organization? Which brings me to the fifth alternative you could explore to avoid layoffs. Now, this is something that I personally used in one of my businesses during the pandemic period. I run an event management company which does corporate events along with my lovely wife Bhakti. Now, when the pandemic hit and there was a lockdown, the first industry that got affected was the events and hospitality industry. Public gatherings were not allowed. No brands were doing any kind of conferences, product launch events, dealer distributor meetings, and our business came to a standstill. Now we had to make a decision. We had to make a choice. Do we lay people off because we don't have work for them and the business is going to run out of its cash flows within 45 days to 60 days? Or what else can we do? And that's where we came up with the strategy of partial deferred salaries. Now, what do I mean by partial deferred salaries? We got our entire team together. We understood every person's basic livelihood expenses through the pandemic. And at a certain level of the organization, at the lowest level of the organization, we did not do any pay cuts. But we started doing deferred pays, which means at the top level of the organization, we said we will take only 30% of our salary. 70% of it, we are not cutting it. We are just going to defer it for times when the business gets back to normalcy, rebuilds itself, makes up for all the cash losses of the business, and then we will pay that balance 70% to the top management team a little later in the year or probably even in the next year. At a middle level, we took a 50% deferred pay where we said 50% of your salary you will get now for sustaining your commitments. Balance 50%, we will defer it to times of normalcy. This partial deferred salary method worked really well because at the end of the day, no team member was losing money. They were only going to get paid that money over a period of time a little later, which could support the business to sustain the cash flows and provide to those who genuinely need every single penny that they take home. Now, this got the team together. It was a very, very fair call. It put the onus on the top layers of the organization, and it truly showed character of the management to the rest of the team. I genuinely recommend this as a methodology. If you feel that the phase you are going through as a business is a temporary phase, it can be a 6-month, 1-year phase, which is totally fine. Offer this as an alternative to your team members. Do a partial deferred salary mechanism so nobody is essentially losing their money. It's almost like they're building up a corpus of savings that will be paid to them in a lump sum over a period of time. A lot of your employees will actually be happy with this as well, because it will make them financially diligent and build some kind of a saving corpus for them. Now this brings me to the sixth alternative you could explore to avoid layoffs. Let's just say a partial deferred salary does not work out as an option for whatever reason. Then the only other alternative for you to explore is pay cuts. And if communicated rightly with intent and integrity, and if you as a management have a goodwill with your teams, where in the past when your business has grown, you've genuinely given bonuses and incentives to people, then when your business is facing a crisis, you can always go back and ride out that goodwill, leverage that goodwill, and ask for support in the form of pay cuts. And people are more than happy if you give them the complete context and complete clarity of where does the business stand and why pay cuts is the only way for us left to be able to avoid any kind of laying off or job losses for any fellow team members. So it's all about your goodwill, your integrity, your track record as a management, which will see whether people comply to your request of pay cuts or not in times of crisis. So far, I've shared with you 6 alternative mechanisms to avoid laying people off. But like I said in the beginning of this video, layoffs are a symptom. The root cause is reckless hiring, improper planning, and over-optimism on your business plans. Now, this is where I tell business owners it's very, very important for you to build a business model which is profitable and scalable, build systems which are simple and sustainable, and build teams which are committed and competent. Now, if you would like to understand how can you design a profitable and scalable business model, what kind of systems you can build in your business so that the business is not just dependent on you, and what kind of teams you can build in your business, then I invite you to invest 4 hours with me at my Business Success Workshop. In this 4-hour learning program, I break down for you the difference between a survival business and a growth business so that you can evaluate the characteristics your business is demonstrating at this point of time. And then from there, I go into doing a gap analysis for your business where you identify where are the leakages happening in your system today, where profitability, where growth and top line revenue is getting compromised on. And once you identify the gaps, I give you 3 specific focus areas that you as a business owner need to invest your time, effort, and energy on to be able to build a growth business. This is where I break down for you what are the characteristics of a healthy business model, what are the types of systems you need to build, and what are the elements of these systems, and how do you go about building capable, committed, and competent teams. So these are the 3 key focus areas that I elaborate on at the 4-hour Business Success Workshop. Make sure you click on the link below, register yourself for the upcoming Business Success Workshop. The investment is just ₹99. It's more so a commitment fee so that you definitely show up, not like I need your 99 rupees, but make sure you take action right now and be there at the Business Success Workshop while I continue this conversation with you on alternatives to avoid laying people off. So let's get back to point number 7 on what alternatives you can explore to avoid laying people off in your times of crisis in business. The 7th alternative is to reduce work hours and work days of your team members and reduce their pay scale in proportion to the time that they are spending at your workplace, and give them the option and the opportunity to explore side hustles or parallel jobs or parallel gigs where they can also monetize their time and make money to sustain their own livelihood and aspirations. Now this works especially in roles where you have quantifiable actions and qualitative indicators which you can measure easily, so that it's pretty much output based rather than time based. It gives flexibility to your team as well, saying, hey, if you want to explore something else, we are giving you free time. Instead of working 5 days a week, work 3 days a week with us, or instead of working 6 days a week, work 4 days a week with us and take the other 3 days off. Do whatever you'd like to do in that free time. Monetize that time if you'd like to, or just spend that time with your family, friends, or taking care of your own health. Now this can give you the flexibility to reduce the pay in pro rata of the time that they are investing in the business, and it can be a good strategy to kind of support the business with some basic cash flows so you at least avoid laying people off. Which brings me to the 8th and final alternative that you could explore to avoid laying people off. Let's just say the first 7 strategies that I shared with you don't fit for you in any context. Then comes the 8th one. The eighth one is to offer voluntary retirement incentives, where you can put it out to the organization saying, hey guys, we cannot sustain this kind of a payroll at this point of time. We are happy to offer a voluntary retirement incentive package of benefits to anyone who wants to come forward and move out of the organization, because we don't have the heart to identify who we should lay off. We rather make it a very voluntary process. So if you have an opportunity outside and you feel you can find a better opportunity outside which can help you sustain during this time, and you come forward and say, I'm willing to resign voluntarily, then we can give you a 3-month pay pack or a 4-month pay package as a bonus or an incentive or a benefit for you to take this voluntary retirement thing, because we don't have the heart to lay people off. Again, this depends only on the context of your business. The last thing you would want when you offer this is that most of your critical people leave, and the ones who are actually the B players and the C players who are riding on the leadership of the A players, they decide to stay. Then it can become a little bit of a conflict of interest for you. It's like you're kicking yourself then. So use it very diligently. Probably make these offers at a 1-to-1 level with certain roles, and let them know that this option does exist. And if they take it, then you are giving yourself a window to be able to sustain the critical staff of your organization. So it's an eighth alternative. It's not my most favorite one, but it is one of the alternatives at the end of the day a business could use. So with that, I've shared with you 8 alternatives that you could use or you could explore as strategies if your business has run into a serious crisis where you're staring at the wall and you feel like the only option is to lay people off. Let laying people off be the last, absolutely the last alternative for your business, for yourself as a management team. Use and explore these 8 alternatives. I'm sure you'll find a lot of flexibility and cooperation from the team when you deploy any of these 8 strategies, just with the one single intent being that you don't want to fire people recklessly just because your business is not doing well. So I hope you found this video useful. Make sure you comment in the section below what was a strategy that you feel you could use in times of your crisis, or which point you resonated with most. Love to hear your thoughts there, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.